Hey students, how you guys doing today? So hopefully you guys did okay with your plate tectonics section. It's a very important section, and I hope you guys are really digging into it, because plate tectonics really is probably one of the most important sections in this class. It ties everything together and helps us to be able to understand geology as a whole, and just earth science as a whole, especially about the geosphere. And so focus on that. Try to make sure you understand those ideas, and you'll do fine. Okay, in this section. This next section is module 6. It's a shorter module. It should only has one activity with it, online activity with it. No discussion related to this. We talked a little bit about metamorphism and plate tectonics. We'll talk more about it later on. But this one's fairly short and fairly easy. As always, go through the objectives and make sure you understand what the objectives are. The main things in this is we start talking about stress and strain, what stress and strain is. So we define metamorphism, we define what a metamorphic rock is. You should already know what that is a little bit. And we'll talk about how it's different than weathering and melting. Okay, so remember, weathering and melting, if in a sedimentary rock, you're talking about rocks that have been broken down into pieces and then cemented back together, right? So everything's happening in the solid state. Whereas in the igneous rocks, everything was molten, so it was in a liquid state at one point, and then was then solidified. Whereas a metamorphic rock is something that's in some kind of a ductile state, where it means it can bend and fold and things like that. And the minerals inside the mineral itself can realign a little bit because of that heat and the pressure exerted on the rock itself. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about that. We're going to explain some of the processes that change the mineral assemblage and texture of the rock during metamorphism. So as it gets pressurized and pushed, it will move and change over time. We'll discuss that. Describe the conditions and geological phenomenon in the earth that causes metamorphism. So mostly this is related to plate tectonics again. It's that pressure caused by the plates themselves that usually cause metamorphism. But that's just the pressure portion. You can also have the bearing plate of material over time will put weight on rocks down below, causing pressure. Heat from our earth as well will cause problems. Those are all things that will impact a metamorphic rock. We'll talk a little bit about that. Recognize a metamorphic rock and explain how geologists classify metamorphic rocks. We'll look at the different types of those. Distinguish between different grades. That grade basically means how much metamorphism has actually occurred. Is it just a tiny bit of metamorphism, or is it an extreme metamorphism? So we'll talk about how that works and how we know it, why it exists. We can then sketch the pathways through the rock cycle. So this is the last one that we talk about, the rock cycle. So we go back to it again and try to remember, well, what's all the different ways we can go to the rock cycle? We can first have a rock that was something that was molten, that cooled off to become an igneous rock. That igneous rock was then exposed to the surface, which we had weathering and erosion, cause that material to go down a river, transporting it, depositing it somewhere, lithifying it. Then it gets buried over time, and that heat and pressure cause that the minerals, the rocks inside of it, to be squeezed to form into a metamorphic rock. Then it has so much heat that it actually goes back to an igneous rock, and so on, right? That's basically what we're talking about there. And then last one is discuss the sources of energy that drive the rock cycle. So the ultimate source really is radioactive decay again, back to our heat of our planet, right? That's the ultimate source of where our energy is coming from. And so, but we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. So in this section, really what you need to do is just do that, go through the reading a little bit. It is chapter 6. It's about 24 pages. It just peruse, go through it, make sure you're understanding it. I wouldn't say peruse, but make sure you understand the concepts. These are all concepts that we could discuss in this section, and we'll discuss in most of them in some detail. And here's the lectures to go with. There are only 3 of these here. It should only be about 45 minutes long as the lecture, so it shouldn't be that bad this time. Okay. So as always, there's additional material as well for helping identify metamorphic rocks down below. Okay. And then last of all, do your online activity. And that's really it for Metamorphic Rocks. It's pretty easy this time, pretty straightforward. It's a smaller subject. It's usually more straightforward for students, and you should do fine. The rest of the week, we're going to be talking about structures, which is also another shorter material as well, but it's one that you probably should get on faster than others because that's where our discussion lies. Okay, guys, you guys have a good week.